Hello, I'm Senator Lisa Murkowski, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Veterans Spotlight, which is a partnership effort in my office and the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. This project was created by the Library of Congress back in 2000 as a way to preserve the personal accounts of American war veterans so that future generations may hear directly from veterans and better understand what has happened on our front lines. As we all know, Alaska's relationship with our veteran community is unique. We have the highest percentage of veterans in our population in the entire United States. Our veterans have served with distinction. They have served selflessly, and every single one of them has a story to tell. Veterans Spotlight is our opportunity to listen and learn. We can learn a lot about our country, our state, and ourselves from the men and women who have fought for us and the freedoms that we hold dear. We owe it to our veterans to honor them through sharing their stories, and we owe it to our nation to use their stories as lessons of patriotism, commitment, and service. If you have a parent, a sibling, friend, or a member of your community whose service to our nation should be shared with the nation, I invite you to reach out to me at spotlight@murkowski.senate.gov.
I was born in 1929, and I can actually remember when I was 3 years old, and from 3 years old. And in 1932 was the deepest part of the Depression. We really didn't get out of the Depression until the start of World War II in 1941. And I remember vividly the Depression, both in the cities, in the rural part of Eastern Oregon. It's the make work projects, the WPA, we used to call them, we fiddle around, because the guys that go to work on federal dole and lean on their shovels, and so WPA with all the kids that call them, we fiddle around. And, just even the soup lines in the cities, remember that vividly. Remember vividly anybody that had a car had to be wealthy, and bonfires alongside the road in Los Angeles. My father was taking his extra in my Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles, and that's why we were there when I was just a little kid. Remember vividly the bonfires alongside the road in January, even though it's Southern California. At night it'd be cold, and cars would stop. Some they would go out and try to panhandle you for a dime. A double-decker ice cream cone cost a nickel, and everybody was in the same boat. Nobody had the money, and my mother would go out and get almost rotten tomatoes from the field because there was no market, and never forget, she made the best tomato soup out of these tomatoes and things like that. And so you have a lot of vivid memories about that. Everybody was in the same boats, and you struggled to get by, and those that got by and had jobs were very fortunate, because so many didn't. It affected everybody, that Depression did. And there's not too many of us left that really remember that Depression. Yeah, I was in Umiat, and a little bit of kind of not forgotten history, because there were only 6 people present when the first oil that was drilled and flowed freely from a well, that first hole. I was a driller as just a kid almost, in Umiat. And before that occurred, I had to go into camp on June the 25th, 1950, and pick up a part for the drill rig. And the camp foreman came out of his Quonset hut, and he's yelling and waving his arms, and he said, "Bud," he said, "we're at war." And I said, Frank. His name was Frank Spinning, and I said, Frank, I said, when I left this morning, everything was fine. I said, what's going on? He said, no. He said, really? He said, we're war. I just got a radio message from Point Barrow, someplace called Korea. And so I said, you know, this is 1950 now. And I said, they'll never find me in this godforsaken place. And 2 weeks later, I got my first draft notice that I was classified 1A and to expect to report for a physical and all these kind of things. And out of about 22 of us that were inducted from where I came from, every one of them went to Korea, except me, and I was the only one that didn't. And part of that was because of my Arctic experience. They did a operation in Alaska, of all places, and I'm stationed down somewhere in Southern California at the time. And they found out on my record that I was from Alaska, so they threw me in the commander of the operations Jeep as his radio man, and the lead Jeep, because I'd had Arctic experience and I can advise him on cold weather and things like this. So we came up during the winter of '52. So they did this survey, what they call the combat survey of the ALCAN. And then when we got to Alaska, they had this great big operation going, you know, with aggressor force, these kinds of things. So I got back to Alaska in the Army that way. It was my mother notified me that a couple of the guys had gone in with me. One was just raised with me as we were more like brothers than anything, was killed. He had volunteered actually to go in the 1st Marines in Korea, and he was killed. And another that went in our group was killed, who I knew. It wasn't, we were friends, but not like Jerry was. Well, when you're in the military, and we were all expecting to go even though I didn't, you know, that hits you pretty hard because you kind of wanted to be there too, and yet, you know, you have these feelings of loss. And I remember those things very clearly. I had occasion, I think it was General Case, I think it was Tom Case, who made the statement that the legislation creating the GI Bill was the greatest piece of legislation America ever produced. It gave us an uncommon advantage over any other nation, and it did. So I am really for that. For, you know, our military deserves it, and the GI Bill isn't just for college; it's for vocational education and so many other things. But it just is a way of kind of paying the guys back who are in the military, and at the same time elevating their educational abilities relative to the rest of the world. And the United States, as you well know, has already fallen behind in general education. So I think more than ever the GI Bill is important for this nation. In school, it seems like I was always running for something, class president or something like this, and in dental school. And then when Wally Hickel first ran, I was an independent then, but his first run before he became Secretary of Interior, we liked him and we got involved in his campaign. Both Mary Jane and I did. And I had just really kind of gotten myself into a position financially where my debts were being paid and all these kind of things. And Walter Cooley, one of Governor Hickel's assistants, came up and asked me if I'd run for the legislature. Now this is really early on, and I just would have loved it, but I couldn't. I was financially wasn't able to, and had a young little tiny family and the kids, and so I just said no, I would like to, but can't do it. And so that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And then when I reached the ripe old age of 70 and I've been retired and everybody's gone and I'm wondering, what am I going to do? I've been involved in Juneau in other areas. I've been appointed to several positions by several governors. I still had that ambition, you might say, or in the back of my mind. So I didn't run until I was 70 and swept the field and then re-ran and was successful again. And then got ill in my last session down there. And they gave me 2 years, and I went to my caucus and said, I'm not going to spend the last 2 years of my life looking at all your ugly faces. I'm going home to this beautiful wife I have at home, you know. And I overcame that illness, and I'm still here. But I did leave the legislature and wasn't defeated. I just left, you know. But did a good job down there. It's been and still continues to be a great life.